we're sending a message to every city, to every county, to every state, that no longer will their Washington be soft on crime. No longer will we be defunding police. No longer will we be softening sentences. A new Republican majority changes the course. So this may just be a bill that makes D.C. safer, but it is a message for the entire nation that we want safe streets, we want safe communities, we want safe schools, and we know in a bipartisan way that everybody wants the same. So before I begin, I want to thank a few people. First of all, I want to thank the author, Andrew Clyde. But Andrew Clyde will be a little different than a normal politician. He won't take credit for the idea. He'll take credit for using his ears. You see, this idea wasn't something that he just thought of. It was because somebody who lived here came to him concerned. She didn't even belong to his party. She's concerned about walking the streets, concerned about what the D.C. police was going to do, not what the D.C. police wasn't able to do, but concerned about what the city council was going to do, to decriminalize and allow more crime to happen. So he said, you know what? I'll do something about it. I'll take up a resolution. Not knowing whether it'll pass or not, but knowing that he had a fight on his hands. And you know what? He went to his chairman, Jamie Comer. He's going to speak with us today. You can applaud him as well if you want. But also, we're very blessed to have a lot of law enforcement members as members of Congress who helped along with this. Sheriff John Rutherford, former police officer Pete Stauber, always the sheriff, Troy Nels, former Captain Clay Higgins, former sheriff Congressman Ezell, and our former homicide detective in New York, Congressman D'Esposito. All of them used their expertise to help us. And that's why we are here today. We're here today because the issue is bigger than politics. We've watched what happened across this nation when people want to defund the police. We've watched what happened to our neighborhoods when you decriminalize activities. I think it was rather ironic earlier this week, an opposition group that's hands off D.C. held a competing rally at Union Station, not wanting this day to happen. In the middle of the day, they held this rally. And you know what happened in the middle of the day during the rally? There was a carjacking at Union Station. Sad but true. Every American deserves to be safe in their streets. Every kid deserves to be safe in their schools. People should feel safe walking. And we were going to make sure we stood up. You know, there was an unbelievable statistic D.C. Chief Police gave us this week. He said the average homicide suspect in the District of Columbia has been arrested 11 times before committing the murder. 11 times. So how did we get to that point? This is what happens when politicians decide we need fewer arrests or shorter sentences and defunding of the police. Earlier this year, this is why we're here, the D.C. City Council passed a law that would give criminals softer penalties for serious crimes like carjacking, assault, rape, and even certain types of murder. Can you even believe that? Today shouldn't be a historic day that we're able to get this through, because when we first put it on the floor, the president told everybody that he was opposed to it, and then it passed. A sad part happened that day, that we had an own member of Congress get assaulted that day before coming into work to even have this vote. She voted with us. But then when it moved to the Senate, the American public has spoken that they've had enough. It might just deal with D.C., but really what this bill deals with, every city in this nation. So this is the moment in time we take our streets back. This is the moment in this country that we say no more. This is the moment in our nation that we say we want to feel safe and be safe no matter what city we are in. And that's what we'll do today. With that, I want to call up our majority leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All Americans deserve to be safe. People who live in the District of Columbia deserve to be safe. When American citizens come from all around the country to see their government in action, and by the way, now that the House is open, where all people can come and see their government in action again, more people are participating in that process, but they deserve to be safe when they come here too. And Andrew Clyde recognized that. As you saw crime getting more and more out of control, and shockingly, the D.C. Council passed an ordinance that zeroed out, got rid of mandatory minimum sentences for violent offenders, people who commit violent crimes. If somebody carjacks you at gunpoint, used to be over 14 years they served minimum, brought it down to 0. And for many other violent crimes too. And Andrew, as the Speaker said, heard from someone here in D.C. who said, can we do something about it? Congress has a constitutional duty to be able to govern D.C., to pass legislation, to solve problems. And here was a real serious problem that needed to be solved. When House Republicans ran to get the majority, one of the things we said we would do is fight for those people who are being left behind, fight for those hardworking families who government had just forgotten about. We said we would address crime in communities. In just a few short weeks, we now have a bill going to the President's desk that will be signed, that will save lives here in the District of Columbia. We wasted no time to start following through on the commitment we made to America to address serious problems. You've seen it in the last few weeks. We passed another important bill today that will go to the President's desk and probably be signed to declassify information on the origins of COVID so Americans can find out how this really started. A disease that affected every American all across the country and people all around the world. And you're going to continue to see us bring legislation week after week to fight for those families who had been left behind for way too long. But today we're talking about a bill that's going to make communities safer. And as the Speaker said, this doesn't just involve D.C. We saw just a few days ago, the people of Chicago said, we're going to take our city back, and they fired their mayor. This is happening all across the country. People are fed up with crime that's out of control, and they want to do something about it, but we're going to do something about it as well. And this bill that Andrew Clyde brought forward, that all of my colleagues behind me proudly voted for, even with the President saying he was opposed to it, that's not why we do this. Whether or not the Senate's going to take it up, whether or not the President is going to sign it, is not the driving factor. The real issue is it the right thing to do for America? And if it is, we're going to do it, and then we're going to encourage the Senate to pass it. We're going to encourage President Biden to sign it. But at the end of the day, this is about getting this country back on track. And the D.C. police chief probably said it best just a few days ago when he talked about how dire this is. Because we stand with the blue. We've got the Fraternal Order of Police here represented today. We support the men and women in law enforcement who keep our communities safe. But there's nothing more demoralizing to police officers who are risking their lives than when they see that they arrest somebody, a hardened criminal who committed a crime, created another victim. And even when they're found guilty, they get to walk scot-free and go commit more crimes. This is really happening. The police chief pointed it out. He said for every single person who's murdered, 11 other victims were created prior to that. So not only is this bill important to keeping our streets safe, there will be fewer victims in the District of Columbia when this is signed into law. There will be fewer homicide victims. There will be more people alive in the D.C. the next few months and years, because somebody who commits a homicide, if there's 11 other victims, if you put them in jail the first time they're caught, there's not those 10 other victims and the 11th person that's actually a homicide victim who's killed. This bill will save lives, this bill will make streets safer, and this bill will send a message for other people around the country in state houses and in cities throughout the country to take action just like we are to make communities safer. And the man who helps get the votes to pass these bills is our whip, the hockey player, Mr. Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Andrew, and the entire team that's standing behind us, including our leader, our Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. We're only 2 months into our majority, and House Republicans keep delivering for the American people. First, we forced Joe Biden's hand on everything from ending the COVID national emergency to bringing him to the bargaining table on the debt ceiling. Yesterday, we delivered legislation to the president's desk to protect Americans' hard-earned retirement dollars from funding the left's woke agenda. And today, we're signing our bipartisan, common-sense legislation overhauling D.C.'s radical criminal code that forced even Joe Biden to admit the Democrat-run city has a crime issue. House Republicans are taking charge where Democrats have failed. Americans made it clear when they elected a Republican House majority that they are tired of the same old soft-on-crime policies that turn our communities into safe havens for violent criminals. Make no mistake, the 173 Democrats who voted against this bill have proven Democrats remain the pro-criminal, anti-law enforcement party. Sadly, I don't think that's something to cheer about. Joe Biden and the Democrats have a choice. Continue to cave to the leftist lunacy that lost them total control of Washington, or buck the woke nonsense and join the GOP's battle to restore common sense to the nation's capital. Either way, Republicans are going to continue to lead the charge. And with that, Jamie Comer from Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Whip. We're here today because House Republicans have kept a promise that to support legislation to make our nation safe, starting right here, right now, in our capital city. There's a crime crisis in our nation's capital, and the D.C. Council's soft on crime legislation was set to turn it into a catastrophe. But House Republicans, led by Congressman Clyde, stood up for the American people to block this reckless law from taking effect. The D.C. Council's progressive soft on crime legislation would have eliminated almost all the mandatory minimum sentencing requirements for violent crimes while drastically reducing the maximum penalties allowable to the courts. These changes would encourage criminals to run rampant in our nation's capital. The chief of police even said so. The D.C. Council also sought to grant the right to jury trial to include most misdemeanor offenses. This would have overloaded an already crowded D.C. court system and reduced the resources devoted to hearing cases for serious felony offenses. All Americans should feel safe in their capital city. But they don't because of D.C. Democrats' leniency towards criminals at the expense of American safety. Ensuring public safety and addressing crime is a cornerstone of the House Republicans' policy agenda. In November of last year, Americans voted for a new majority in the House, a new majority that will address crime head-on to ensure a nation that's safe. The D.C. Council legislation was a brazen rejection of law and order. That's why Congress took swift action to block it from becoming law. Ignoring the high rates of criminality in the district and doubling down on leniency for society's violent criminals is a dereliction of duty. If the D.C. Council wants to continue to skirt its responsibility to keep our citizens safe, they will have to answer to this Congress. The Oversight Committee stands ready to conduct robust oversight of America's capital city. It's my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of the bill and someone during his stint on the Oversight Committee last year took an interest in this and is led on this. And today we're here to celebrate his legislation. Andrew Clyde from Georgia.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, and First, I want to thank Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Leader Steve Scalise and Whip Emmer and Chairman Jamie Comer for their very strong leadership on this very important issue of personal safety. I'd also like to thank all the members from both sides of the aisle who voted for my resolution, HJ Res 26. All of you gathered here, thank you. It continues to be my goal to ensure everyone, residents and visitors alike, can feel safe in our nation's capital city. I also want to thank my staff by name. You need good staff to do your best work, and I have great staff. So thank you to my Chief Nick Brown, to my Legislative Director Dawn Marie, and her two assistants, Tony and Cam, to my LC Chase, to my scheduler Lindsay, who keeps things running smoothly, to my comms director Madeline, who makes sure we are heard, and my staff assistant Peter. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Finally, I want to thank an incredible lady named Denise Krepp, who is here with us today, a resident of D.C. with a big heart, who was fed up with the crime in her community and the devastating effect it was having on hardworking, law-abiding citizens. She wanted to do something positive about it, and I thank her for engaging with my office. Where leadership in D.C. refused to listen, we listened and we acted. Denise, I promised you that we would do everything we could, and today's ceremony is a promise kept. Again, I care about the safety of everyone in this city, where crime is out of control and must be reined back in. Against all odds, with this bill, we prevailed. And I'm pleased that my resolution received broad bipartisan support in both chambers, because combating crime is not a partisan issue. It's a common sense issue. I'm pleased the president changed his tune and agreed to sign it if it passed the Senate, and it did, 81-14. This resolution put members on members of both the House and Senate on the record on the issue of crime. While some still embrace the council's soft on crime law, many joined us in passing my common sense anti-crime resolution that will effectively strike down the radical rewrite of Washington's criminal code that would have emboldened violent criminals and exacerbated an already serious crime crisis in D.C. This is a major win for House Republicans, as this is step one in keeping our commitment to ensure we have a nation that is safe, one of the 4 pillars in our commitment to America, and we are starting with our capital city. I now urge President Biden to keep his word by signing my resolution so we can move forward in our fight to restore law and order here in Washington, D.C. So thank you, and I now yield to Mr. Mick McHale, the National President, National Association of Police Organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership and consistent support for America's law enforcement. And thank you to Congressman Clyde and Senator Hagerty for leading the charge to protect the citizens, the visitors, officers, and most important, public safety of the District of Columbia. I am Mick McHale, President of the National Association of Police Organizations, which represents approximately 251,000 sworn law enforcement officers across the country through more than 1,000 police unions and associations. While NAPO does not represent the fine officers of the Metropolitan Police Department, law enforcement agencies in cities across the country are facing similar attacks on public safety, similar to what these officers and this community faced in the revised Criminal Code Act. Not only were we concerned with the impact of lower penalties on crimes such as carjacking, illegal firearm possession, and robbery would have on the city's public safety, we strongly oppose the changes the revised criminal code would have made to an officer's ability to not only defend his or herself, but to defend the public. NAPO is grateful for the bipartisan opposition to the district's revised Criminal Code Act and the action Congress took to roll it back so that the D.C. Council can work with the mayor the police department, and the union to revise the criminal code in a way that will no longer benefit violent criminals and will make the city much safer. Thank you very much.
Now I want to introduce Patrick Yos, National President of Fraternal Order of Police.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And thank you for your leadership and to all the members of Congress. One thing that Americans are united on is their fear of crime in our country. One thing that America is united on is wanting to find solutions to real problems. And here we are. We find ourselves in a number of cities, including this city, and thank you for the leadership here to stop depolicing the police and decriminalizing criminals. One thing that America is united on is they're looking across this country and seeing cities that have taken steps to do just that, and they see the carnage that's happening in their cities. So on behalf of the 364,000 members, of which includes the Metropolitan Police Department, I thank Congress for taking the steps in making not only this city safer, but also the brave men and women who show up and suit up every single day and show up in this community, in this capital city, in order to make it safe. If we're truly going to make an improvement in the criminal justice system, it's going to be because everyone is working together to do so. And putting it at the feet of law enforcement, demonizing law enforcement, and having these discussions and coming up with these, this bill that, these actions, this act, that did not include a rank and file police officer's perspective on any of it, shows that it was a flawed process to start with. So again, thank you for making our jobs, our very difficult jobs, safer in the capital city. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And now we want to bring up Greg Pemberton. He is the president of the D.C. Police Union. Greg?
Good morning. My name is Greg Pemberton. I'm the chairman of the D.C. Police Union. We would like to formally applaud the work and the bipartisan passage of the House Joint Resolution 26, which disapproved the action of the District of Columbia Council in its approval of the revised Criminal Code Act. This week, 81 United States senators joined the House and made a bold step forward to reduce rhetoric and restore justice for victims of crime in our nation's capital. On behalf of the nearly 3,200 members of our union, I express our formal thanks and heartfelt appreciation for this vote supporting public safety and justice for victims of crime. Our members are incredibly grateful to Congressman Clyde and Speaker McCarthy on advancing this important piece of legislation, especially at such a critical time for our city. We all know that the bill from D.C. City Council went too far and sent the wrong message to violent, repeat criminal offenders. The passage of House Joint Resolution 26 marks the first time in over 30 years that the U.S. Congress has been forced to step in and provide necessary checks and balances to the D.C. City Council. In the past 3 years, the Metropolitan Police Department has lost over 1,200 police officers while replacing just 700. This mass exodus is a direct result of the D.C. City Council's ongoing and unjustified attacks on law enforcement. This resolution is an important first step in the right direction to restore justice for victims of crime and an important move towards repealing pro-criminal legislation. But our work is not yet done. There is a dangerous shortage of officers in the Metropolitan Police Department, and further action will be necessary to improve retention and restore recruitment so we can protect the district with professional, responsible, and qualified officers. We stand ready to provide input and work together with our elected leaders to create a safe and fair city for everyone. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our president of the National FOP, Pat Yos, who you just heard, who was instrumental in helping us get this passed. But thank you, Speaker McCarthy and Congressman Clyde, for all of your help in this matter.
We thank the officers for their work. We've known that, as Greg just told you, the number has been decreasing. That's the wrong direction we should go. And too often when people come to this city, they become a victim of crime. And unfortunately, we want to put a stop to that. We made a promise and the commitment to America to make our nation safe. This is just the beginning. But with us, with our last speaker, Will Dixon, has happened to have been one of those victims that we want to have fewer of and come to the point where nobody becomes a victim here. Will?
Good morning. name is Will Dixon. My girlfriend and I work here on Capitol Hill. Almost 7 years ago, we moved from Western Pennsylvania to D.C. for college. In those 7 years, we have never had any problems with violent crime. On Thursday, October 13th of this last year, my girlfriend, her roommate, and I were walking home from our usual weeknight dinner spot in Navy Yard, something we've done countless times before. There are only 5 blocks between the restaurant and their house. On this night, when we were just 2 blocks from the house, an SUV stopped in the middle of the road. One man got out and demanded my girlfriend hand over her purse. She did. Another man got out of the driver's seat. He ran up to me and he put the barrel of his gun on my chest and demanded I hand over my phone and my wallet. I handed over my belongings. After that, the first man held his gun to our friend's head, demanding her belongings as well. She complied, and they ran back to the SUV. As they sped away, we began running to the house. The police who arrived on the scene told us the men who robbed us did the same thing to 3 or 4 other people in Navy Yard that same night. The weeks after were challenging. My girlfriend recalled feeling like a child, being afraid to walk outside in the dark, and continuously weary about cars slowing down near us. Now every time we walk home at night, we think, is this going to happen again? Unfortunately, nearly 5 months later, the men who robbed us have not been found. Under the D.C. City Council's proposal, the punishment for these men would be drastically reduced. I'm thankful that congressional leaders are standing up for people like myself, my girlfriend, our friend, and the countless individuals in all parts of the district who have become victim to the rise in violent crime on our streets. Thank you, Speaker McCarthy, for allowing me to share our story today, and just as importantly, for taking action to address it.
Will's story is not a story that's told alone. Too often we hear that story, and not just in this city, but across this nation. I hope as those who listen to us and see this action, that we promised you, if you gave us the opportunity to lead, that we would fight to make this nation safe. This is just the beginning. We want everyone to feel secure to walk home. We want everyone to feel safe in their streets and neighborhoods. So we want you to join with us and be a part of this resolution, because it's just the beginning. It's our commitment to you. So if you can join with me, we'll sign our resolution to send to the president.
First, I'd like to recognize a few individuals.